In a world obsessed with status, love, and lust, one man stood alone, mocking it all with a lantern in broad daylight, searching not for romance, but for an honest man. Diogenes of Sinope, the infamous cynic philosopher, didn't just ridicule society, he exposed its deepest hypocrisies. And when it came to men chasing after women, he didn't hold back. His brutal honesty revealed uncomfortable truths about desire, weakness, and self-deception. This is not just philosophy, it's a mirror. And if you dare look into it, you might not like what you see. Diogenes was not just a man who lived in a barrel, he was a living rebellion against everything society held sacred. Born in the 4th century BCE, Diogenes grew up in a world where power, money, reputation, and romance ruled men's lives. But he saw something deeper, something disturbing. He saw how men were not truly free. They might have had wealth and influence, but they were enslaved by invisible chains, by the need to be admired, by the need to belong, and especially by the need to be desired by women. When Diogenes was exiled from his city and left with nothing, he made a radical choice. Instead of rebuilding a comfortable life, he decided to strip life down to its bare essence. He slept in a large ceramic jar, often called a barrel, ate scraps of food, and owned only a cloak, a staff, and a cup, which he eventually discarded after seeing a boy drink water from his hands. To Diogenes, freedom meant needing less, and the fewer things he needed, the fewer things could control him. Now imagine that mindset applied to relationships. Most men, Diogenes observed, spent their lives chasing women, trying to win affection, approval, or intimacy, believing that this pursuit was noble, even necessary. But Diogenes saw the tragedy in it. He believed that as long as a man was chasing something external, whether it was wealth, fame, or female attention, he could never be free. A man who depends on another person's approval, or whose happiness rises and falls based on a woman's affection, has handed over his power. That, to Diogenes, was spiritual suicide. He mocked the idea that love, romance, or sexual conquest could define a man's worth. To him, a real man was one who stood alone, not in loneliness, but in self-sufficiency. A man who could say, "I do not need your validation, your attention, or even your company to feel whole." While others dressed in fine robes and composed sweet poetry to woo women, Diogenes walked barefoot, wrapped in rags, laughing at the ridiculous lengths men went to for pleasure and acceptance. His message wasn't that women were bad. It was that men had forgotten themselves in the pursuit of them. The barrel wasn't just his home, it was a symbol. It told the world, "I would rather live in truth and discomfort than in luxury and self-deception." This led Diogenes to one of his harshest but most insightful criticisms of male behavior. That lust doesn't just distract men, it enslaves them. For Diogenes, lust was not just a passing impulse. It was a weakness that disguised itself as strength. Society praised men for being ladies' men or for conquering many partners, but Diogenes saw this as pathetic. "What kind of strength is it," he asked, "if a man's dignity can be undone by the curve of a body or the promise of intimacy?" Diogenes believed that true strength was found in self-mastery, and self-mastery begins with conquering your impulses. He observed how great men, philosophers, warriors, kings, could lose their minds and make fools of themselves in the presence of beauty. Men who would never bow to an emperor would fall to their knees for the chance to impress a woman. He laughed at how love songs and romantic obsessions were treated as noble when, in his view, they were just socially accepted forms of addiction. And the worst part? Most men weren't even aware that they were addicted. He once compared lust to a tyrant, an invisible king inside every man that dictated his actions, emotions, and even his identity. Men who defined themselves by their success with women were, in his eyes, pitiful. Their lives became a cycle of chasing and being chased, never knowing peace, never knowing themselves. And it wasn't just about sexual desire, it was about the illusion that being wanted by someone else makes you worthy. Diogenes tore that illusion apart. His brutal honesty was meant to provoke, to wake people up. He wasn't saying that desire was evil. He was saying that if you don't control it, it will control you. If you spend your life trying to impress, seduce, or win over others, you've already lost yourself. And losing yourself is the greatest tragedy of all. So when Diogenes looked at men who chased women, he didn't just see romance. He saw fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of not being enough. Fear of being unseen. And rather than confront that fear, men dressed it up in flowers and poetry. But no matter how sweet the disguise, it was still weakness. And Diogenes? He would rather offend the world with truth than comfort it with lies. Among the many outrageous stories about Diogenes, one stands out, not because it was vulgar, but because it was deeply symbolic. According to historical accounts, Diogenes was once seen in the middle of the marketplace publicly masturbating. To most people, this act was obscene, repulsive, and unforgivable. But Diogenes was not doing it to be provocative for its own sake. He was making a statement. When questioned why he would do such a thing in public, he replied, "If only it were as easy to relieve hunger by rubbing my stomach." This response, on the surface, seems sarcastic or absurd, but beneath it lies a powerful message about human nature and society's hypocrisy. Diogenes wasn't ashamed of his desires. He was ashamed of a world that forced people to hide their natural impulses while pretending to be noble and virtuous. In his eyes, society taught men to repress their instincts during the day and indulge them in secret at night. It taught them to speak of love as something sacred, while treating it as a transaction behind closed doors. Diogenes refused to play along. He understood that men, especially, were trapped in a game they didn't even know they were playing. On the surface, they followed the rules. They wore clean clothes, spoke politely, courted women with compliments and gifts. But underneath that surface was raw, uncontrollable desire, a hunger that dictated much of their behavior, whether they admitted it or not. And this, to Diogenes, was the height of human absurdity. Why should we pretend to be creatures of reason when we are so obviously ruled by our appetites? His public act was not just a rejection of shame. It was a challenge to the entire moral code of his time. He wanted people to see how ridiculous it was to create elaborate social rituals to hide what we all feel. In a world full of men who chased women to satisfy their own lust or to feel powerful, Diogenes stood alone and said, "You are not honest. You do not chase love. You chase escape. Escape from boredom, from insecurity, from yourself." By acting without shame, he exposed the shame in everyone else. Diogenes did not believe in the romantic ideal that love must always be noble or poetic. He saw how easily people dressed up lust in elegant words, pretending their urges were something higher than they really were. And in doing so, they not only deceived others, they deceived themselves. Diogenes refused to live in such delusion. His message was clear. We must be honest about who we are, even if that honesty is ugly. Only then can we begin to live with true freedom. But Diogenes' critique was not aimed at women. He never suggested that women were inherently manipulative or unworthy. On the contrary, he often directed his sharpest criticisms at men, especially men who lost themselves in pursuit of women. He understood something timeless, that when you chase someone else to complete you, you reveal a painful truth. You are incomplete. You do not know who you are. You do not value your own company. And so, you run after others, hoping they will fill the silence inside you. Diogenes believed that desire itself was not evil, but allowing it to rule your life was foolish. He encouraged men to turn inward and ask, "Why do I want this person? Is it love, or is it loneliness? Is it connection, Or is it insecurity? Often he found the answer was not noble. It was driven by fear, ego, or the longing to feel powerful. And when desire is born from weakness, the relationship it creates can never be strong. For Diogenes, the ideal man was not the one who won the most women or had the most lovers. The ideal man was the one who needed no one, not because he was heartless, but because he had built a foundation inside himself. A foundation made of clarity, simplicity, and brutal honesty. He did not chase women because he did not chase anything that could be taken away. He only pursued what could not be lost: his integrity, his reason, his peace of mind. Diogenes knew that society would never reward this path. The world admired charm, wealth, and seduction, not solitude, independence, and truth. But Diogenes didn't care. He walked through crowds of admirers and critics alike with the same indifference. He didn't seek approval, and that made him dangerous. Because a man who doesn't need anyone's validation is a man who cannot be controlled. And so, his message to men was not to hate women or avoid relationships, but to free themselves from dependency. To love, not because they need someone, but because they choose to share their already full life. To pursue connection from strength, not desperation. To live in such a way that even if every woman walked away, they would still stand tall, unmoved, unbroken, and completely at peace. If Diogenes were alive today, walking through the noisy, glowing streets of our modern cities, his reaction would likely be a mixture of laughter and scorn. Imagine him striding through shopping malls filled with designer clothes, past clubs blaring with music designed to seduce, through dating apps flickering on screens where people swipe left and right in pursuit of quick validation. Imagine him watching reality TV shows that reward narcissism, influencers who commodify their beauty, and men who measure their worth by how many women they can attract. He would see, not progress, but proof that very little has changed. Diogenes, who carried only a staff and a cloak, would mock the modern man burdened with status anxiety and sexual desperation. In a world where people are constantly trying to curate their lives for attention, posting gym selfies, showing off luxury cars, trying to appear desirable to strangers, Diogenes would not be impressed. He would likely hold up a phone, laugh hysterically, and ask, "Is this what you now use to feel loved?" He would walk into a bar filled with men trying to impress women with flashy watches and carefully rehearsed lines, and shout something brutally honest like, "Why do you need to be seen when you have nothing worth seeing?" He would point out that the very technology that promised to connect us has made us more dependent than ever. On likes, on swipes, on constant external approval. He would see that men are still chasing women, not just in the streets or bars, but through 1,000 digital screens and performative identities. The pursuit hasn't stopped. It's only evolved into something more desperate and more hollow. To Diogenes, this behavior wouldn't be a sign of liberation, it would be a sign of collapse. He would say that we've built an entire culture on pretending to be desirable instead of actually being desirable. That instead of becoming strong, wise, or self-sufficient, we've chosen to become marketable. That men don't know who they are anymore because they're too busy trying to be who women or society wants them to be. And yet, Diogenes would not just mock, he would teach through his life, his defiance, his contempt for falsehood. He would remind us that true freedom comes from needing nothing, not attention, not sex, not even companionship. He would show us that to be truly alive is to strip away illusion and confront the world, and yourself, as it really is. That only a man who can sit alone, in silence, without craving, without anxiety, without shame, is a man who is whole. He would ask, why do you chase someone else's body when you have not yet claimed your own soul? Why do you hunger for another's love when you have not learned to love your own mind, your own presence? Why do you define your masculinity by the number of women who want you, instead of the depth of your character and the clarity of your thought? Diogenes would not be surprised by modern red pill culture, nor by the counterculture that rejects it. He would simply laugh at both. Because in his eyes, both are symptoms of the same disease, the belief that your worth must be proven to others. Whether you are chasing women or rejecting them, if your identity is still defined in opposition to them, you are still not free. He would offer a better path, not easy, not popular, but real. He would say, live simply, speak truthfully, desire only what you truly need, do not seek approval, do not manipulate others to get what you crave, and above all, do not lie to yourself. Because the man who lies to himself is already lost, no matter how many people adore him. In today's world, such advice would sound radical, maybe even offensive. But that's precisely the point. Diogenes didn't come to comfort people. He came to wake them up. And if he were here now, he would tell modern men the same thing he told the citizens of ancient Athens. You have built golden cages. You have mistaken seduction for strength. You have confused pleasure with meaning. And until you stop chasing shadows, you will never stand in the light. His life was a warning and an invitation. A warning against letting desire turn you into a slave. An invitation to become something far rarer and far more dangerous. A man who is free.